Welcome to Duo Reality Podcast. I'm your host, Mercedes Blendzz. Today, I challenge you to remove expectations. Removing expectations. Remove expectations. Remove expectations. Boy. Now, this is the thing. There's no first step in healing, okay? There's no 12-step program for inner healing. It's going to come and go. Things are going to ebb and weave as they do. But I thought for the first episode of this podcast, what would be a great way to start? I think one of the best ways to start your inner healing is, first of all, of course, self-awareness and self-assessment, but removing expectations. Give yourself some grace. Give yourself some grace, baby, okay? Now, first of all, what are expectations? Let's get into that. According to Google, a strong belief that something will happen or be the case in the future. A belief that someone will or should achieve something. Now, the example that they give here is reality had not lived up to expectations. And boy, ain't that something? Shouldn't that be the theme for 2020? Let me tell ya. Oh, and by the way, the smoke that you're singing, I have an incense going on. But anyways, yeah, remove expectations. I think that's such a great theme for this year because let me tell you what, reality is not living up to expectation. Expectation is a strong belief that something will happen or be the case in the future. Now, when I say remove expectations, I think the first thought that comes into mind is that, wait, is this something bad? Is this something bad? No, not all expectations are bad. Enter in boundaries and relationship assessment. That's where those things play a role, which we'll talk about in the next episode. But expectations are not always bad. What expectations do and what the removal of expectations do, first of all, I'll say that. What the assessment and removal of expectations do is gives you some grace. Some grace and some breathing room, okay? And on top of that, there are a lot of expectations that are on us and within us that aren't even our expectations. They're things that other people have put on us. Expectations aren't necessarily good or bad, but they're there to serve a purpose. They are a tool. Now, part of inner healing is taking an assessment of yourself. And that includes the expectations that you hold yourself accountable to and where those expectations stem from or come from, if they're even from you. 80% of what you think about yourself actually comes from somebody else. Let's talk about that for a second. 80% of how you see yourself, the conversation that you have in your mind, the things about yourself or the behaviors that you have about yourself, 80% of that is something that somebody else told you or put on you. A majority of what you think about yourself stems from something that somebody else told you. So for example, let's talk about the body image. Body image is a really, really big one for me. And it was probably one of my biggest breakthroughs when it came to removing expectation in the way that I converse with myself and how I think about myself. So body image, right? Growing up, I always believed that I was a big girl. I was always told that I was a big girl. I was always constantly reminded that I'm a bigger person than other people were in my age group. And this was by family members. Y'all aren't innocent. This is by family members. This is by my family's friends, people who have zero place to speak on a child's body in the first place. And, even my peers would tell me that I was a big girl. I really felt this way. It really, people would say comments about certain clothes that I would wear, or they would say comments about me, the way that I did a specific activity, the way that I ran, the way that I, put on my shoes or something. There was always a comment being made about my appearance. And so I began to adopt these comments and adopt this way of thinking that not only was I a bigger person, but because I was a bigger person, I wasn't allowed to wear certain clothing and that I wasn't allowed to engage in certain activities, that I would always be the odd person out and look different. I just want to say I'm so sorry to young Mercedes. I'm so sorry, baby girl. You didn't deserve that. You didn't deserve that. You deserved so much better. It was frustrating, I'll say. It was frustrating that I wasted, I wouldn't say wasted, but it's frustrating that I spent a majority of my life not liking the way that I looked. Not because I didn't like the way that I looked, but because other people told me that I shouldn't like the way that I look. Even up until now, I'm still battling, certain things that people have said to me. I went shopping today at Target and I was like, oh, I want to get some shorts. And I had to even second guess myself for a second and like break apart the old ideology that I had, because I used to think that I couldn't wear shorts, that I couldn't wear skirts or dresses. I would always be wearing jeans and a t-shirt. And to this day, I still have to break it down and go, Mercedes, that's not you. I don't know who told you that. Actually, I do know who told me that, but we're not going. Listen, it's all tea, no shade. I don't know who told you that, boo, but you look good and you feel good and it's hot. Put on some shorts. And I even to this day had to do that. I had to be like, wait a minute, hold on. I can wear some shorts. I can wear some shorts. I look good in shorts. And I look good because I feel good. So this is this example of this body image, of this expectation, because growing up, the expectation was I was supposed to look a certain way. I was supposed to be a certain size. I was in cheerleading and, I was around a lot of these little tiny girls, we was throwing them up in the air all the time. I was around these little tiny teensy weensies, and good for them, baby boo, but that's not the blueprint. And then this was also during the time that America's Next Top Model was like the thing. And so then you're constantly comparing yourself to, these women who they don't even look like themselves. You know what I'm saying? In the magazines, they don't even look like themselves. So why am I comparing myself as a child to a grown woman? And not only am I comparing myself to that grown woman, but why are other people comparing me to that grown woman and holding me to that expectation? Make that make sense. Let me tell you. Let me sit to that. Let me make that make sense. You can't. And it's funny because, I look back on old photos of myself. Where was I big? And the interesting part is it's all in your mind. Even as I did get bigger and I actually got pretty overweight, like I almost felt prettier during some of those times of being at my biggest weight, because I felt more confident in myself and who I was. And I would look back at those other photos of me and I would be like, wow, she looks really amazing, but she felt terrible. She didn't love herself. And now here I was, I think at the time, maybe 2 years ago, 2.5, almost 3 years ago, I was at my heaviest. I was at like about 232. 232 is my heaviest. I'm only about 5'3". Okay. That's hefty on me. And that's 5'3.5" on a good day. But the numbers don't matter, because it's just a way of knowing where I'm at, right? It's just a measurement. So even at my highest at 232, I felt better about myself and I felt like more confident and I felt good about myself more than I did, 3 years prior to that. And I was 150 pounds. I was almost 80-pound difference. That's crazy. There was almost an 80-pound difference. That's crazy. And I still didn't feel good about myself. No, that's other people putting their expectation on me. And that's something that I constantly have to break down every single day, are those things that are in the back of my mind that, my aunts have told me, my cousins have told me, my friends who are not my friends anymore, but my friends have said these little snippy little comments, like that one dude in high school who told me that I look cute for a chubby girl. That's funny because you're still in my DMs to this day. So I'm cute for a chubby girl. Like I don't understand where the disconnect is. Why does it have to be it's like a backhanded compliment, like I'm cute, I guess, to the extent that a chubby girl can be cute. I'm sorry, but chubby girls are cute. Listen. Anyways, that was a little bit of a that was a little bit of a tangent. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, it got so much to the point where I had this idea that I couldn't buy myself clothes, like new, nice clothes. I couldn't spend money on myself on clothes because they weren't going to look the way that I wanted them to look, or the way that I thought that they were going to look on me. Or I didn't deserve to buy new clothes for myself and spend money on myself because I didn't look a certain way. And that's an expectation that was so unnecessary. So unnecessary. And I got that from other people. I didn't put that on myself. I got that from other people. So I had to release that, release it. And this is just a small example of how expectations can shape our perception of ourselves and even influence our behaviors. I wasn't buying clothes for myself. That's crazy. Now, don't get me wrong. I love me some Ross, but I wasn't going and buying quality clothes for myself. That's not self-love. You're not loving on yourself if you're not buying quality clothes for yourself. And I'm not talking about, going to Ross to get your t-shirt, or if you maybe struggling a little bit. No, I wasn't struggling. I was just going to Ross because that's what I thought that I deserved. Anyways, another example of a way to remove expectations is removing expectations from the people around you. Now, I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in the next episode. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in the next episode. But I actually had an expectation that I placed on somebody else. I had an expectation that I placed on, you can place expectations on other people to fulfill a specific role. And then when you have an expectation that somebody is supposed to act or behave or treat you or treat themselves a certain way because of this role that you put them in, and they don't live up to that, you're disappointed constantly. And that's exactly what happened to me. I put an expectation on somebody who, one, didn't even know that I put that expectation on them, didn't ask for the expectation or consent to the expectation, and was constantly struggling to maintain a relationship with me of any type of meaningful value because I was blocking them because they weren't living up to the expectation that they didn't even know that they had or that I had of them. So there was this friction. There was this friction constantly friction. And every time this person didn't live up to this expectation that I had of them, that they didn't even know that I had of them, I would be disappointed. And I would feel like I'm not enough and they're not enough. And now here we are, both not enough because of an expectation they didn't even know that they had, and I had no right to give them in the first place. How often do you hold somebody to an expectation that they don't know about? And how often are you held to an expectation that you don't know about, or an expectation that you do know about, but you know that it's just unrealistic and you're not going to live up to? And that's where boundaries comes in. That's where a relationship assessment, and you have to have a conversation with people, and you have to have a conversation with yourself. And the second that I release this person of that expectation that they didn't even know that they had on them, shout out, shameless plug to Natasha McCrae, aka your next life coach. Okay. The second that I release this person of that expectation, our relationship began to flourish. Our relationship began to flourish because I stopped judging a fish on its ability to climb a tree. And I just let the fish do what fishes do and swim. And there's a little Albert Einstein reference for the nerds out there. If you take that same methodology and apply it to every single expectation that you find within yourself and within others or within the world, your peace will flow immediately when you stop blocking it with expectation. So to wrap this up in a neat little bow for you, okay, give yourself some grace and extend that grace to those around you. You are exactly where you need to be at exactly the right time. Reevaluate yourself and your expectations of yourself and your expectations of the people who are around you. Ask yourself, is this from me? Did I put this on myself? Or is this from somebody else? Is this lingering from somebody else who put this expectation on me that I'm still holding myself accountable to, even though it's not from me? Release what's not yours and the rest will flow. You live in an abundant world. You are a divine human being just living this human experience. Never forget your greatness. Humility comes from the peace of knowing who you are. Learn yourself. Love yourself. Remove expectations from yourself. Give yourself a little grace. Now I'm just going to sign off with a little quote from my girl Harriet Tubman. No shade all tea, but shout out my girl Harriet Tubman. You have within you the strength, the patience, the passion to reach for the stars and change the world. Thank you so much for listening or watching this episode of Duo Reality Podcast. I'm your host, Mercedes Blendzz. If you found this episode to be enlightening, to be empowering, please feel free to share, comment, subscribe to however you're listening to it right now. If you feel moved to donate, please check out the website duorealitypodcast.com. And I hope you have a great day. You got this.